Okay, so thanks for joining, and today we are going to be going through my top 10 workflow and efficiency tips. So basically, from my perspective, these are the 10 most used things that I personally do. So you may actually find other things on the internet in terms of workflow, but I can guarantee you, if you use these things, you will be working much faster than you currently do. So let's start straight away with my number one tip, which is the simplest tip, which is to use the tab button on your screen. I'm not sure what you call that on an Apple keyboard, but on a PC it's the tab button. And tab button does this. It moves you from session view to arrangement view. Okay, just pressing it a few times just to show you how easy it is. So you're probably thinking, what the so what? Well, actually, that's what I thought, because I've always known about the shortcut, but really very recently, in the last few months, I've been using it a lot. And I'm telling you, it is the most used thing I use. So why, you ask, is this an important shortcut? Well, I can show you straight away that there are things on the arrangement view that you just can't see or you can't use, that you've got to go to the session view. So for example, if you want the master volume, you've got this volume here, but actually I want the fader. So to see the fader, I have to go to the session view, and there it is. So I can do that type of manipulation on the fader, but I can't do that in the arrangement view. So I literally have my finger hovering over the tab button throughout the entire time I'm creating a song. So it's not just that. The other thing you can do is you can actually click on any of these tracks. So when I click on the top line vocal here, this one here, which is track 6, if I press tab, it highlights the track, and straight away I can start messing with the sends. Because on the arrangement view, I don't know if you've noticed this, the sends are the same information. So this one here would be, they're just little boxes with numbers. And I just prefer to use these pots instead, okay? So you can, yes, manipulate the sends here, but if you press tab, you've got just a much nicer view of the track. I'm not sure why they designed it so differently. It could just be a space thing, but tab is hell of a lot more useful than you think it is. So the other thing is that you can use it for is not just, so you can actually set the sends where, to whatever you want it to be set to. And also you've got the pots here for the panning as well, which is really useful. So you can, it's just more of a visual way to see what's going on the track. When you go back to it really quickly, like I just have, you can actually then just go to, it says, so it's automatically gone to panning here. So that's another thing. So if you go to the first send, which is reverb, send A, which is reverb. If I just go here to the arrangement view, the automation line for reverb automatically appears. So that's another really useful thing. Then obviously I can start doing some leveling and automation on the reverb, which I shall get rid of now. So that is your first numero uno workflow tip. Some of you probably use it a lot, but if you don't, this is hopefully helpful to you. So the number 2 workflow tip, which I find really useful and I use a lot more than I thought I would when I first started trying it, is A. You're thinking, what's A? A is a shortcut for automation, and it's a shortcut, it's on your keyboard. So make sure you don't have this up here, you don't have those keys selected. If you just press the A button, you'll notice that all of the automation has gone. So A just enables automation and disables automation. You're probably thinking who gives a shit, but actually I do, because if you are in automation mode, it's fine for moving your automation signals around, but it's a real bitch to duplicate. Well, I just did it there, but sometimes it's quite difficult to do stuff like duplicate, copy, paste. You know, you've got to kind of select the whole thing, which is, you know, you get used to that, but that's fine. But if you just press A, you just select your bit, press Control D to duplicate, Control C to copy and paste. Okay, so you've got a lot more control. And the other thing you can do very easily by pressing Control E, it just splits the audio signal, and it gives you that kind of little square at the top there of the track, and then you can crossfade it like that, or you can just simply do this, which is fade in. So just listen to this. Okay, so you can do that. You can crossfade. You can change the level of crossfading, so you can crossfade it faster or slower. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do there, but I wouldn't have been able to do it so easily without pressing A. So A is my second tip, and obviously A goes to automation and automates an automation of everything. Okay, let's just remove that. So that's your second tip. So tip number 3 is grouping, and most of you probably know, if you select all, minimize, if you select all, you can probably group. For example, I can group all my top line, all my vocal tracks, which are these ones, by pressing Control G. So most people know that, and that's fair enough. And obviously, if you group all of the tracks, you can hide all of the tracks. So what that means is, if you group all the vocals in one place, you can mute all the vocals at the same time, and that's really handy. So it's not just for grouping it's not just grouping for placing effects and that sort of thing, but it's also grouping for muting or soloing all of the tracks at the same time.
Do you remember?
So I've got the tracks here, so I can hit the 2 tracks at the same time, rather than pressing S twice, which is much more annoying. Okay, and it's easy to ungroup. Once you've done your work, you can just press Control, Shift and G, and then ungroups and brings everything back and removes all of the settings on the group. But the other really, really useful part of grouping is not so much that, actually. There's not many effects here, but just say we've got the master track on. So I tend to throw a lot of stuff on the master track. So what I mean by that is let's get some audio effects. So I might throw in a compressor, an EQ, saturator, blah, 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 blah. Let's just throw, actually, let's do a saturator. Let's throw a saturator in there. Okay, maybe, I don't know, something else, maybe, I don't know, phaser. I'm not going to use a phaser, but yeah, so maybe something like that. I mean, obviously I'm not going to use a phaser on a master track, but what tends to happen in my tracks is every time I put quite a lot of effects on the master track, it just slows the whole song down, and I've got a slow computer, so it just slows me down. And I've actually worked out a very fast way to deal with that. So you can still do all of this stuff on your master track, but what I've just done there is I've selected all of the elements, I've pressed Control G, now I've put them in an audio effect rack. So essentially now, let's just hear what it sounds like. It'll probably sound really weird. That's not too bad. So you want to put, say, a limiter in there, right at the end of the chain. Okay, that's not that great, but my point is, If I just want to just switch the effects of the master off, it's just as simple as pressing this button here, and they're off. I'll put them on, switch them off, put them on, switch them off. Okay, so that's what I do for, actually I do this on every track. I've got this grouping where I can group all the effects and switch them on and off as I need, so I can actually speed up my workflow when I'm creating and arranging. So that is the third, the third tip. The fourth tip is something that I find saves a lot of time. So sometimes you might have a vocalist giving you lots of, like giving you 4 or 5 tracks, and each time you do some warping, don't you? You just make the song fit with the track. So you might get them unwarped like this, and then because they send you the track to fit the song, and then you just click warping and you do your warping, and your thing might default to beats, but you want to put it to pro, and maybe you want to transpose them because they need to be transposed a little bit because they're not in tune, in time with the melody, or you've changed the pitch of the song and you need to transpose the vocals, or you want to just do a very deep vocal. So if you want to do that, it's fine if you're doing it for one sample, but if you're actually doing it for all of the vocals, the best way to do it is if you select the first top line here, and then, so the first thing you need to do is put all of your vocal tracks, all of the similar tracks, next to each other. So you've noticed here I've got top line in track 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, and I've got 10. So I've got those ones are all vocal tracks, and they're all together. So you select the first one on the first row, and then you press shift, and then you select the last track. So you literally have selected all of the tracks that you want. But you'll notice here that in the sample, you've got elements that you can change. So say I wanted to shift all of those tracks up by 2 semitones. I wanted to detune them by 4 cents, that's the word. Or I wanted to get rid of warping on all of them, or I wanted to change them all to beats. Okay, you can do that by selecting all of them, and you'll just notice now if when I just select one of them, it's changed that one. It's changed them all at the same time. So that is a really big time-saving thing for warping. Just going to remove all that stuff. Yes, so that's all done. And the other thing that is really useful, well, whilst we're in the warping area, the other thing that's really useful is, I'm just trying to find the track actually. I've got a rhythm track here. So here's the track. No, that's not it. The rhythm track is this one. Let's just loop that, pressing Control L. So this is defaulting to complex, because I've got my audio is defaulting to complex. If I select beats and select transients, which is where mine are all going to, and then just select the transient loop mode. So literally we've got this mode here, which is a loop forward only mode. If we just reduce the transient envelope, it kills the reverb of the song and actually kills a lot of the body of the song. But sometimes with beats, you actually want that, because you don't want too much shit going on in the background. You just want that rhythm. It does reduce the volume, but you can easily just increase the volume. You don't want to clip it as well. Obviously, I need to fix the pitch. Let's just do that now. I need to fix the pitch of all the vocals, so I just untranspose them just by double clicking. So you can hear how that's the body of that loop has gone. And this is what it sounds like in its normal sort of state. So it's not an efficiency tip, but it's actually a really useful tip in terms of just changing sort of the flavor of your beats. Number 5 is actually quite a useful thing. I guess a lot of more experienced producers would know this, but I'm putting it in here because I think it's still really important, and if you don't know it, this is a good chance to learn it. So what we're looking at now is if you press Control L on any of these loops, so you just looped this bit here, there's a bunch of stuff you can do very quickly, okay? So the first thing you can do is you can insert silence. So you insert silence, it automatically inserts silence in at the range of the loop that you've selected. So say for example I've selected this range here and I press Control L and I press create insert silence, it will create silence like nothing at that size. And you're probably thinking, yeah, that's pretty basic stuff. You can do the same thing now if you select the loop. So you can do something like, once you've inserted silence, you don't need to insert silence, you can do something like duplicate time. So duplicate time just duplicates what you've selected, okay? But it inserts the information, it doesn't overwrite anything. So Control Z to undo that. And then finally, you want to cut time. So that just deletes whatever you've selected. Just undo that. And lastly, you can copy and paste time. So I'm going to select the area I want to paste. So you just select any sort of area. It will paste it to the beginning of the area that you've selected. Okay, and then you've got paste time. So it's just copied this and inserted it. It hasn't deleted anything, it's inserted it into that area. So all pretty useful stuff. Insert, paste time, duplicate time, delete time. Very useful. So next, you might think this is actually quite simple. For an experienced producer, this might be quite simple stuff, but bear with me. So one thing that you can do is you can select multiple tracks. So by selecting a single track, I've selected sort of track 6 here, you can press Control A and it automatically selects all of the tracks. And you're thinking, well, what's so good about that? Well, when you select all of the tracks and you pick anything, any event that anything that you do, it will do it to all of the tracks. Okay, so if you get rid of the sound for all of the tracks, it will get rid of them. It will solo all of the tracks, right? It expands all of the tracks. It resizes all of the tracks to the same resizing, and it minimizes all of the tracks. And if you press Shift, you can, for all of the tracks you've selected, it will move. So I'm just moving the A pot, so for the return to A, and it's just moving all of them at the same rate. I could pan all of the tracks. Remember, this is all relative, so this one here was already panned, so it's going to be a bit confused. I can arm all of the tracks. I can arm all the tracks that are relevant to MIDI, obviously not to the audio tracks, but I can arm all the audio. No, I can't arm the audio tracks because they are they're not available to be armed. They're all off. But I can make them all in and then arm them all. Arm them all. Okay. So selecting all of the tracks by pressing Control A is very useful. So the next tip is templates. So one thing you could do with templates, let's just go back to first tab again. Go back to our audio temp. Let's actually remove this. Let's not save. Let's come up with a new track. So I may want to, I like my Fab filter, right? So I like my ProQ, let me just go and have a look at the ProQ plugins. I always like to have an EQ and a compressor on every track. I may not use the compressor, but I like to have them on every track. So what you can do is you can save the default audio track. So whenever I create a new audio track, it creates the same track with the same compressor and EQ, which is super cool. The other thing you can do is I like to have two EQs actually, so let me duplicate this by pressing Ctrl D. On the last EQ, I like to have a setting called cut low side. I just want to get rid of that low side information, which is not going to help, but there's a preset that just does that. So I want that to be on all of my tracks. So we're going to override the existing one. So I'm now going to create another track. So it will have this new track now has free VSTs on them, and the last one has the preset in it. So it's really handy, really handy to have that. And you can do that with all your tracks, not just your audio tracks. You can do that with MIDI as well. So just going back to this, so we'll just go and just keep a basic audio track and a MIDI track. I'm just going to copy these by pressing Ctrl C and press Ctrl V, so I put them on the MIDI track. Okay, if you go to Preferences, actually I'm not going to do that. The other thing I'm going to show you is I like to have record quantization of 16th note quantization. What that means is every time I record MIDI, it'll quantize it to 16 notes, and so it actually does the job quite quickly. Okay. The other thing I like to do is I like to use the Valhalla vintage verb in my returns. Just leave the default, and the delay I like to use the Sound Toys Echo Boy Jr., just the default one on the B return. And you know, you could choose your own, or you could just use the ones that Ableton provide, but I like these two. So I've got my MIDI track has got these already on them, and my audio track's got these already on them. Now I can go to Preferences, and under File Folder, I can save the current set as default. So next time I open a new live set, let's just not save this one, you can see straight away I've got my plugins for MIDI and audio. Also, when I insert a new audio track, it always opens those plugins, similar to new MIDI track. Oops, actually it didn't do it for the MIDI track because I need to save that as the default MIDI track. So let me just delete that. So that next time you open your MIDI track, there you go, it will open those plugins. Valhalla popped up, Echo Boy pops up, and crucially, the thing I keep forgetting to do, 16th note quantization pops up. This is my template, the template I like to have, and you can actually have more than one template, but that is outside the scope of this. So you may want to, for example, to have a template for mastering, but this one is for quick production. Okay, so that wasn't that quick a tip, but it was actually worth the time. So another really useful shortcut, and we're up to number 8, which is freeze tracks for arrangement. So my favorite plugin is one called Diva. If you see my other videos, you'll see me use it quite a bit. So I've got good old Diva going here. So let's just plug that into one of the MIDI tracks. And I'm just going to play something in Diva. Okay, nothing, nothing too special. It's a bit loud, so just put the volume up, down. So I'm just gonna just keep it, just loop it like this. So Diva on its own, like on its sort of basic preset, is fine, but once you start messing with it, it's really it's full on in terms of CPU processing. So once you put, say, an Echo Boy on it, you can really hear. And Valhalla's got a couple of really good ones, that like the Space Modulator. And finally, the Frequency Echo. These are free, by the way, but they're super good. So you could, and just press A, get rid of that, and we just change the sync. So you'll hear some really weird artifacts when you hear the syncing move like this. Okay, so actually that wasn't really necessary. So on the Diva, it's got some amazing, if we just go into the Diva engine, you can actually see there's quite a lot of amazing utilities. Okay, that's awesome. So that actually proved my point that once you get to a certain level of processing, Diva really will kill your computer. So what a lot of people do with music, and just generally with music, is there's a lot of repetition in this world, in the world, in terms of music, and you might do something like this, and you may want to put this somewhere else up here, or just change it or whatever. But what I have done in the past is I will just take this one loop and I will right click on it and freeze that. So just freezing that one loop, you can see it's taken a bit of time. It takes quite a lot of time, it's not finished yet, it takes quite a lot of time to actually freeze that loop if you've got that loop repeating multiple times. So actually what I prefer to do is select the loop once it's frozen and then loop it. So even if you unfreeze it, this MIDI information stays, but it's just taken you less time to freeze it, if that makes sense. So freeze a little bit and use it a lot, rather than freeze a lot and struggle. So that's just one tip with freeze. The other thing is you may want to do stuff with that. You may want to do this, which is flatten and turn that into a WAV audio file. And you might think, I want to do that, but I don't want to lose the MIDI information. Well, the answer to that is quite simple. You would just duplicate the track. You would switch the first one off. And the second one would be flattened. It doesn't take any time. And once you flatten it, you can do all sorts of audio stuff to it. Okay, so that's just your tips for freeze, and yeah, it's just, I guess over time I've learned to do that in that way. So the next one is presets in terms of shapes and copy paste and automation. So you're thinking, what does that mean? Well, I showed you before the automation that's possible. Say, for example, we want to send some information to the one of the return tracks. So you say Echo Boy. Let's put this down a bit. So one of the things you may want to do is increase the volume. So you can just right click on that and select that. And that will just increase the volume from nothing to a lot. And I did that in a click. I might want to do it the other way around. And you may want to do some, funny stuff like waves. It works better with effects than with actual volume. Okay, and if you press Shift, let's just expand this. If you find the actual center point there, let me just make this bigger. Press Shift, you can move it down slowly. Okay, so what I mean by that is pressing Shift just moves that section. If you didn't press Shift, the whole thing would move. I don't know if that makes sense. See? So it can be a bit funny, fiddly, but you get used to it. So pressing Shift is really useful when you're selecting and moving. But you've got to actually find the bottom point of the... Otherwise it can be a bit of a mess. I mean, the answer, if you're struggling with it, is simple. Just select the whole track and just do it again. This is why you've got to press Shift. Because if you don't press Shift, the whole thing will just move in relative to each other. So just pressing Shift, oops, we'll just move the bottom bit. Okay, all good. The other thing is, once you've got these kind of interesting shapes, you can actually just copy paste them by pressing Ctrl D. So you can paste them like that. You can actually select that section there and use that over there, like over that sort of longer section, and Ctrl D over that as well. So copying and pasting automation is really useful. And remember, it's easy to do once you press the A button. You can't do it if your automation switched off, but just press A. So yeah, all cool. So the last one is, I think, really, really interesting one that not many people would know. And I'm not sure how useful it would be to a lot of people, but it's definitely really useful to me. And that is, and I don't know if you know this, but when you render your song, when you export your song, you press export, but because ASIO is on, you can't hear anything. Maybe a lot of people don't really know this, but actually I don't have ASIO on because I'm recording, but it's the same thing with MME and actually it's not, it's only for ASIO. So a lot of people use this, which is the ASIO, can't see it, but it's the ASIO for all driver, which I use a lot. I'm not using it now because I'm speaking to you, and I can't do that with ASIO. But what you can do is when you have ASIO, you just select no audio. And you can still export the track. You can still export the track, and the track, I'm not going to show you now, but believe me, this works. The track, actually let's do it, will still export even if the ASIO is off, even if you've got nothing on. So let's just listen to it. Okay, so I thought that, I don't know if that's useful to some people, but it was extremely useful to me. The reason why is because I do all my work within ASIO for all, which a lot of producers probably do. But once ASIO is on, I can't actually listen to anything else on my computer. And I'm sure that's a common problem, not just with me. So what I do is I have that off when I'm rendering, because sometimes it takes 5 minutes to render a track, especially my tracks, with all the, I'm recording 6-7 minute tracks these days. and actually want to use our computer for other things, for listening to music or for doing something else or research. So it is really handy to be able to do that and render stuff in the background so I'm still productive. So that's my last productivity tip. So definitely put some comments in if you don't agree, or if you feel like I've said something incorrectly, or if you like what I've said and maybe you want to add something or your own productivity areas. That would be really useful to know as well, because I'm always learning myself. So yeah, thanks a lot, and I hope you got something out of this. Catch you later.